the good teams need something to help them win. Like the Kansas City Chiefs, they need Rasheed Rice to play most of the season. I'll tell you why here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Oh, man, is it your team every day here on Locked On NFL? We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On NFL PM podcast called The Barbershop, where we slide through every afternoon and give you some of the biggest stories from around the NFL. Today we'll center on training camp and what the good teams need. I got the good man, Kevin Ostraca, here joining me today from Locked On Ravens. We're going to run it down. First of all, I'd like to thank the everydayers for joining us each and every day. We appreciate you spending your time with us. We do not take that for granted. The other thing I'd like to do is to welcome anyone who is new and tell you, I hope I give you a reason to come back. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets. Win your first $5 bet wins. Let me tell you where we're going. We're going to end up talking about Washington, how they must avoid the sophomore jinx in segment number 3. We'll add another team in there also. I might get Kevin to tell me a little bit about Baltimore, what they got to fix. I think it's the offensive line, but we'll see. Right in the middle of the show, the Bills, young defense. They got to grow up. They played well last year, got some new parts, but they still are going to be missing Von Miller's leadership. But we're going to start where we said we were going to start, and that is with the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been to 5 out of the last 6 Super Bowls. One thing they missed they missed 2 things last year. Protection on the offensive line that I hope they think they fixed. And Rasheed Rice out with injury. Rasheed Rice is back, but Rasheed Rice might not be back. He might get suspended because his legal situation has been adjudicated, and now it's time for the NFL to make their decision. Kevin Ostraca, tell me what you think the Chiefs would be missing without Rasheed Rice.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dynamic part of what they do, and I think we saw that last season when he wasn't available after suffering the injury. And while I think that Xavier Worthy can take a year 2 leap because he was, I think that Super Bowl game is everybody, that's the lasting impression he made on people. And then I think Hollywood Brown could be a nice little compliment in that offense. I think Rasheed Rice is really what unlocks it. Watching Rice play against the Ravens in week 1, they line him up in the slot. You can line him up out wide. You can do a lot of different things with him. And, he's a matchup nightmare. And I think with the way the NFL is today, the more weapons you have, obviously, the better. But a lot of the good teams have 1A, 1B, or they have 5 different guys you can get the ball to. It's not just like you have one top receiver and then the rest is kind of like, who's there? It's either a nice mix of talent or you have a bunch of guys. So to me, I think Rasheed Rice brings a lot of ability to Kansas City. And whatever the NFL decides on how long he's going to be out or what that suspension looks like will impact the Chiefs early on. And, maybe their offense looks a bit like it did last season.
And maybe people don't have to go to Arrowhead late in the year, and they could make them. Well, we tried that 2 years ago. They came to Baltimore, but you know what I'm saying, though. All right, but Rasheed Rice is a prototype. He's the one guy that they have that is not a small guy who's fast. He's 6'1", 6'2". He's that Devontae Adams type body who is a prototype in the NFL. Listen to the guys from Locked On Chiefs talk about him.
It comes down to Rasheed Rice. Long offseason, the issue in Dallas, then the injury, but now he's back. Looks really good from every piece of film that we've seen of him to this point. I feel he is ready to not only lead this group in receptions, but in yardage, and quite frankly, in first downs is my guess. And I think that's a critical thing that we don't always cover, in that it's not just the receptions you make, but what the result of them is. And his personal performance is going to take a leap this year. I thought he was ready to blast off last year, and the injury got in the way. I think he picks up right where he left off.
I think he has the ability to pick up right where he left off, but he just got to stay out of trouble, man. I mean, this day and age with Henry Ruggs and that sad situation, you got to be an idiot. Not if you're a football player, just period. To be driving 100 miles per hour on the highway with a whole bunch of people, you got to be smarter. He changes their team. Like I said, he's the dynamic, do-it-all wide receiver with a big body who's very, very different from anyone that they have. Now we got to get to the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Philadelphia Eagles, what can they do wrong? Philly don't need nothing. Yeah, they do. Believe it or not, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is one person and Darius Slay is another. I mean, you add that together, you're talking over 2 decades of experience. Even though the young guys played well last year, they got to play well again. Listen to my man Lou DiBiase talk about Cooper DeJean.
If the Eagles, if they want to do more with Cooper DeJean this year, and again, as I've said 1,000 times in the show, I don't think Cooper DeJean's role is going to be that different in 2025. He was the best slot corner in football last year as a Rookie of the Year finalist. He was top 4 this year, according to Pro Football Focus, in overall man coverage grades with actually Quinyon Mitchell. So both Eagles rookies were top 4 in man coverage grades per PFF. It was those two, Christian Benford from the Bills and Patrick Surtain from the Denver Broncos. So Cooper DeJean, like, you want him in the slot. You want him doing what he did last year. He's so good against the run as a tackler. Cooper DeJean is kind of that Malcolm Jenkins DB that I think can cover any type of player.
Ever since Howie Roseman in 2020, was it 2020 or 2021, when he didn't draft Justin Jefferson and he took that little itty-bitty receiver that hadn't done much, ever since then, he has been on a heater when it comes to first-round picks. And I don't think it's any different now. They just got to make sure, and this is all on Vic Fangio, to make sure that those rookies, they can now step up into those leadership positions and be the ones to lead that defense on the back end.
Right. It's essentially you still have talent. It's just guys who don't have experience or much of it compared to the guys that you lost. And we know the Eagles, just like all teams, they're not going to be able to keep everybody. There's going to be losses. You're going to lose guys, especially when you are able to draft as well and make moves as well as Howie Roseman has over the last handful of seasons. I mean, you stack up a roster that much and, you know, a salary cap exists. You can only put so many guys under it. And so at that point, for the Eagles, losing guys like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, and you mentioned the guys in the secondary, it's a matter of how do you replace those guys? And I mean, at least in the pass rushing situation, they do get Azeez Ojulari, which I thought was a really good deal for them. And it's about, can you find those not only bargain deals, but one of the most valuable things you can have at the NFL level is a rookie contract, because you can get star level all-pro production for 4 to 5 years potentially at a fraction of the cost that guys who are on their second deals get. And it's not about that player, you know, being, oh, why is he getting paid so little? Why? Well, it's because he's actually that good as a young player. And so that's where you see good teams continue to impress. And that's why drafting is so important. It's why when you look at teams that are consistently, or at least most of the time at the top, it's teams that can turn over year to year, have really good rosters. And then when all of a sudden a good rookie class is up for extension and you can't sign everybody, it's about, can you bring in the next rookie class or next group of young guys that can take over? And so for Philadelphia, their secondary was absurdly stacked last season, you know, with those vets. Now you lose a couple of them. So it's about other guys taking on bigger roles, stepping up and making sure that they can make impacts like those vets did.
No doubt about it. And I know people out there are going, wait a minute, Kansas City and Philadelphia, what are you talking about what they need? They're loaded. If you ain't a good team, you ain't going to get mentioned today. Your team ain't getting mentioned today, because even all of these good teams need something. They need something to happen, or sometimes they need something to not happen. We'll talk about the Lions when we talk about not happening in segment 3. In segment 2, though, we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, how they're young players. Some of them have to grow up really, really quickly, because even they, over the last couple of years, have lost a lot of veterans. Joe Marino will tell you exactly who those young guys are. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Reshape. Guys, look, if you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Reshape Ready. Reshape Ready is next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and blood flow. It boosts that. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Reshape's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average about 15 minutes. effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to rugiet.com/lockedonnfl and use the code lockedonnfl to get 15% off today. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnfl. Use that lockedonnfl code for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Rolling along with my main man, Kevin Ostraca from Locked On Ravens, talking about good teams that need something. I ain't mentioning his team today because I ain't going to support it with a clip, but at the end, we'll even let him tell us about those Ravens that somebody who ain't very smart says need to share a stadium with the Washington Commanders, and that's the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. If you are familiar with the DMV in Baltimore, we'll talk about all that kind of foolishness. But first, we're going to get back to good teams that still need something. And there's one of them called the Buffalo Bills. They seem to do everything right. Brandon Beane seems to really be. He's one of those Howie Roseman types, man. They know how to build a team, and they know exactly what they're looking for. Got a young D-line, and Joe Marino is going to tell you why those guys can contribute early, and then we'll discuss why I think they have to grow up.
Let's talk about reasons to be excited about the Bills' defensive tackles in 2025. And number one for me is the infusion of young talent. The Bills over the last two drafts have been deliberate about selecting defensive tackles. Of course, in 2024, it was Dwayne Carter out of Duke with pick 95. Then this past year, the Bills traded up twice for defensive tackles. The first time to get TJ Sanders out of South Carolina at pick 41. And the other was Deion Walker, the defensive tackle from Kentucky, at 109.
And let us not forget, Ed Oliver is already on that defensive line. The Bills, they have a type. You know what the type is? People that can play. Don't care if they're too big or too long. They'll sit right there in the third round and just snatch somebody like TJ Sanders. And they got Carter the year before. Look, man, I'm telling you, they're not even sneaky good anymore. The Bills are playing in that AFC East, and they might be the ones that are on track to get home field advantage, and that's going to be a hard place to play late in the year.
Yeah, and we know it's one of the, for Buffalo at least, one of the best home field advantages you can have in the NFL. So I think for the Bills, defense is kind of the name of the game for them, like we're talking about here on the D-line. It's not about Josh Allen. It's not about James Cook. They have good offensive linemen, the wide receivers. While you don't have that star like you did with Stephon Diggs, they have ended up taking a new approach, which is just, like you said, we're going to get like 7 guys that can play, and one of them has to do well for us at least. And, maybe it's one guy this week. Maybe it's another guy the next week. Like, it's about Buffalo defensively, particularly, I think, in the secondary as well as on the D-line. They're going to have a couple of guys who are going to be out for the first month-ish of the season due to suspension. 2 guys they actually signed in for agency, one of which is Larry Ogunjobi, who is another defensive lineman. So when you look at it, the Bills are intriguing to me because we know that is their division, the AFC East. I'm not picking the Dolphins or the Jets or the Patriots. They're going to run away with that division pretty handedly. But it goes back to the AFC. Who is that team you have to beat? It is Kansas City. That's the team that they have not been able to get over. We'll talk about the Ravens a little later. They have not been able to get over it. Really, it's only the Bengals. Joe Burrow was only able to get to the Super Bowl out of these AFC teams with the Patrick Mahomes era here, at least this era of Patrick Mahomes football. So for Buffalo, it's about taking that next step like it is with almost every other AFC team this season.
No doubt about it. And you can never have too many defensive linemen. If you don't believe me, go back and rewatch the Super Bowl. Philadelphia lost a couple of those dudes on the defensive line, Brandon Graham, and you mentioned Milton Williams, and they're still loaded. They're still loaded. That's how good they are, a rotation of players. and they all have similar skill sets. You know that as well with Baltimore over the years, man. They've always had a rotation. It seems like Baltimore is always that place with that 6'3", 260-pound defensive end / linebacker who is just a tweener, but he fits their system, and that's what Buffalo is doing up north too. They're building those trenches on the defensive side of the ball. They just got to grow up. Now, someone who doesn't necessarily have to grow up are the offensive players for the Los Angeles Rams. In fact, they probably want to be like Benjamin Button and reverse the aging process, especially the quarterback, Matt Stafford. Listen to this. He has to stay healthy to me, but his importance is going to be talked about here from Locked On Rams.
Stafford, man, do I appreciate Matthew Stafford more today than I did yesterday, and I already appreciate him more than ever. Well, that's because uber talented, has a Super Bowl, and is hungry to win another one. And if you look at the Rams roster and the talent around him, you could easily make the case that this is his best supporting cast since they won the Super Bowl in 2021. And ESPN's Bill Barnwell, he puts out his list of best supporting cast, and he has the Rams supporting cast as a top 5 group in 2025.
So do I. I have them as a top group. I have them as a top team with a very, very young defense. Talk about a team that invested in defense 2 years in a row. The Rams did that last year. The question is this: have they done enough to get over the hump? And instead of losing that close game to Philly, now they can win that close game to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and for them, I think the upgrade from Cooper Kupp to Devontae Adams is going to help them out. You know, to me, they're a team, and there are a couple of them in a league. You know, you obviously have your stars. I mentioned Adams, Bukanuku was there, Kyron Williams, Stafford, et cetera, et cetera. But then you look defensively, and it's just dudes that can play across the board, and you might not know their names. You know, Byron Young is unbelievable, and it still feels like he's not a household name yet, which I think is kind of, that's kind of crazy to me because Byron Young is a beast. You know, you have a lot of solid defenders over there in Los Angeles, and it feels like, just because there's no Aaron Donald or Jalen Ramsey or any of those big names anymore, it's like, oh, that defense isn't as good. No, it's still very, very, very good. So I think to me, the Rams are that sneaky team. It's like everybody's talking about Philadelphia, everybody's talking about Detroit, everybody's talking about Commanders. The Rams are a team, like, do not sleep on this Los Angeles Rams team, because I think if they can stay healthy and if Father Time does not catch up, I think that they could get over that Philly hump that they could not get over last season, which really, like you said, they were really close.
The Rams are the team that if we play the game and we let's just say we start everyone out at one level, right? And we start adding talent equally. Which coaching staff could win it all first without getting everything they need? I think it's the Rams and Sean McVay. They don't even have to be as good as everyone else, talented-wise. But when they are a dangerous, dangerous team, because I have had more than a few people sit on these podcasts and tell me that they believe Sean McVay is the best coach in the National Football League, and that includes Andy Reid. That's a big statement to make, but might be true. Washington, they got to avoid the sophomore jinx. I know there's been a lot of talk between Cam Newton and Ryan Clark about the possibility of a sophomore jinx. It's real, and a lot of people have sat on this show too and told me that they believe Washington's getting a little bit too much love from everybody. We'll discuss that more in the third segment here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You've already followed the action. Now, why not make it more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I mean, Scotty Scheffler, man, he's on a tiger-like run, right? He even had me watching golf yesterday on a Sunday. I'm telling you, he is that good. Make sure you check that out and go to FanDuel, because if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by BetterHelp. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels. This summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. Of course, most of us can't just quit our jobs and take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a few minutes, adding movement into your day, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. That's where BetterHelp comes in. I know it helps me. Sometimes you can get overloaded with work and home. You need to just take a few minutes to exercise a few things that'll help you get back on track. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, moving and grooving with Kevin Ostraca from Locked On Ravens right here on Locked On NFL, where we're going through 6 top teams and what they need to happen in order for them to get to the championship type level. Washington has to have a season just like the one that they had last year, where they came out of nowhere and made it all the way to the quarterfinals, where they lost, well, the conference semifinals actually, where they lost a pretty ugly game to Philadelphia. But hey, nobody expected them to get there, but they absolutely did. There's been a lot of talk about maybe we're moving a little too fast. Washington went out and made some splashes in free agency. Here's my man David Harrison talking about Washington and what they got to do this year.
The Washington Commanders are going to open up training camp this week, and there are several key areas to watch in training camp battles about to begin this year. When you look at the Commanders team, as training camp gets ready to begin, the story isn't about any one thing. It's about everything coming together. A new offensive identity, fierce competition at key points, and a promising young core that all needs to take a step forward.
Well, that's it. They got to grow. They got to keep growing. And as they grow, they got to be able to add players to that team that won't disrupt chemistry. I think they did good with getting Deebo Samuel, a sure-handed guy who doesn't fumble, because they lost a lot of fumbles when they didn't have to late in the season. I think Deebo makes the difference. What about you?
Deebo's a huge addition for them. And honestly, it was about bringing in, not that the Commanders needed any more vet talent because they are already a vet. I think the misconception with Washington is that people see Jaden Daniels at the quarterback position. Oh, that's such a young team because they're quarterback. No, they are old. But I think that Deebo Samuel, despite the fact that he might not be Deebo Samuel of 5 years ago anymore, or the injuries are piling up, he unlocks an offense. Like, he is that guy that unlocks. Like, he is the final key to an offense. And that is because of his versatility. It's because of his skill set, which is very unique. And any team in the NFL would love to have a player like Deebo Samuel. People are trying to get players. These teams are trying to get guys in who are like Deebo Samuel. And so when you already have the offense that the Commanders had last season, obviously led by a Jaden Daniels, and you had the breakout year, well, not a breakout. Zach Ertz is already very good and has had a very good career. But again, the Washington breakout for Zach Ertz. You also have Terry McLaurin, who, for Washington and his sake, hopefully can get that contract resolved sooner rather than later. And then you have guys like Brian Robinson in that running back room. They added guys to the offensive line. Larry Tunsil was a big addition for them, obviously. Defensively, I just think that's the name of the game. It's for them. Again, the offense is not the question for me, and I think he improved that area of the team. It's defensively where you do now have Von Miller. Can he maybe dip into the fountain of youth a little bit and do something? But at this point, I think for Washington, the expectation is going to be, oh, man, they made the NFC Championship game. Now they have to make the Super Bowl. And I don't think that's fair for Jaden Daniels because, for all these teams, it can be, I guess, but it's not realistic for it to just be linear improvement every single season about, by the time year 3 is over for Jaden Daniels, he'd be winning every single Super Bowl. So, and I guess Mahomes kind of has done that. But at the end of the day, for the Commanders, it was about improving along the margins so you can be better equipped to face a team like Philadelphia in the postseason. And I think they did that.
I think it's going to be one of those things to watch too. Like, how do you handle success with a young quarterback? But like you said, One of the oldest teams out there, man. People just think just because they're an upstart that they're young, and that's not necessarily the case. Another team that wants some get back and some act right for last year are the Detroit Lions, because they pulled off a miracle winning as many games as they did last year, and they had 185 people on injured reserve. Well, that's not off to a good start. Unfortunately, defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike is going to miss the season with an ACL. It's not a good thing, but they're still loaded. Here's my man Matt Derry to tell you just how loaded.
Team. They all feel like they have something to prove. You know, being in the city of Detroit, we're so hungry for a championship, and we've gotten so close. We've gotten a little taste of getting there, on our way there, having season best 15 wins last year. So I hope this is the year. I'm one of those positive, optimistic fans. I'm not the one that's going to say, oh, we're going to have a crap year because we've lost key people, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, amongst others. You still have the same team all together with the same foundation. So I think this is the year, but the window's getting shorter.
That is Natalie Kerwin. She was a guest with my man Matt Derry. I know y'all saying, well, Matt look and sound different. That ain't Matt Derry. No, it was not. That was Natalie Kerwin who was the guest. But a lot to unpack with the Lions, man. They're already missing coaches, and they have to continue with that continuity. Brad Holmes and of course, Coach Dan Campbell are still there. It's going to be hard, though, if they don't get these players back healthy.
I mean, that's the name of the game. It is, good team. We've seen how many teams, Wig, have we seen that, oh, they're going to win the Super Bowl. This roster's so good. And then it just gets taken away because the team can't stay healthy. It's one of the saddest tales in sports. And it happens every single season to at least one team, honestly, multiple teams. And for Detroit, yeah, they're in trouble on the defensive line. And, I agree where it's not like you have to bury them on, this is July 22nd. We don't have to bury them at the end of July. Right. But at the same time, there are legitimate concerns, and especially in the division they play in. I mean, I think the NFC North could be the best division in football this season. And with a team like Minnesota, who, they're going from Darnold to McCarthy, we'll see how that works. But they're around him. They have guys. You mentioned even teams like the Packers, who I'm expecting Jordan Love to take into the leap. Chicago, is Caleb Williams and that team going to make some noise this season? So, while I still think Detroit should be favored in that division, I think it might look a little different for them this season. And if the injuries pile up, and look, it happened to them last year too, where the injuries piled up on defense, right? That was the big thing. And they ended up they had consequences for it. They weren't able to go as far as I think a lot of people thought they would. So health is the name of the game. You have to stay healthy. One of the best qualities you can have is availability. And, right now Detroit is off to a rocky start in that regard.
The Baltimore Ravens, they are one of the 6 best teams in the league. I didn't include them in this because I knew I had you anyway, right here. Offensive line, is that your biggest concern? That's mine from the outside looking in. It's offensive line.
I mean, roster-wise, I think, the guard positions. I mean, you're not worried about Ronnie Stanley or Tyler Linderbaum or Roger Rosengarten, but it's the guard position. I think right now Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees are going to be the 2 guys to win those jobs, in my opinion. And, Falele had a very up-and-down season. I mean, very up-and-down season last year. And Andrew Voorhees kind of lost his spot and really never got it back after getting injured early in the year. So it's kind of the inexperience there and lack of, consistent play. But I mean, it's all about the postseason with the Ravens. I mean, they could go 17-0 and everybody will be talking about the postseason because that's the book on the Ravens, and they've done it to themselves where they're a great regular season team. They go and they do the thing, and then they get in the playoffs in one of these games and they lose it, whether it's, the coaching staff, the execution from the players. It's all been bad in terms of some of these all-time seasons they've had. They've had 3 really good chances to win the Super Bowl, 2019, 2023, and 2024. They don't even have a Super Bowl appearance to show for it. So it's about the Ravens being able to treat the playoffs like it's like if you didn't tell the Ravens when the regular season ended, they'd win the Super Bowl because that is how good they are in the regular season. Unfortunately, you do know when the regular season ends, and it's about execution, not getting in your own head, which I think Baltimore has done. And I guess that is a lot easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, roster-wise, they have really everything you can hope for. Star quarterback, a lot of great offensive weapons. The defense is great. I mean, they just have to get to the postseason and execute.
I think if they play clean, they can beat anybody on any given day. It just seems like in those games, they go in there and make 2 mistakes because they know they can overcome them, but they end up running out of time each time when they try to overcome those mistakes. Make sure you check Kevin out on Locked On Ravens. First, you need to go to Locked On NFL and watch our top 100 because this here is voted on by the NFL host of the Locked On Podcast Network, and our 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Don't miss our reaction shows. We have had those too. Every single day, and it's been hilarious. I've been talking about Travis Hunter being the number 67, and I ain't even put him in the top 100. All right, so make sure you tap in. Training camp starts for everybody. It starts in Jacksonville tomorrow. It starts in some other places as we speak. It's go time. It's go time for us here. So we're going to go get busy with it. For Kevin Ostraca, Tony Wiggins, we thank you for joining us for 30 to 31 minutes today. We have a good time with you always. We never take for granted you coming here with us on Locked On NFL. Until next time, we'll see you.